Good evening. The Bulger verdict is in, but the debate over who won and who lost is just beginning. U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz says it's a victory for the government and Boston can finally move on. But nagging concerns remain about the government's role in Bulger's crime spree. Carmen Ortiz is here tonight and joins us in just a minute. But first, Adam Riley takes a look at the lingering questions about the government's accountability.
On the face of it, the verdict in Whitey Bulger's criminal trial was a big win for the government, which saw Bulger convicted on 31 of 32 counts.
This day of reckoning for Bulger has been a long time in coming. With the conviction of James Bulger, we hope that we stand here today to mark the end of an era that was very ugly in Boston's history.
But last night on WGBH's Greater Boston, Bulger attorney Hank Brennan said his client sought to put the government on trial and succeeded.
When we started this case, the effort was at the most important part to help show the role the government played in this entire conspiracy. They not only created victims, but they continued to victimize the victims by denying their responsibility.
And Tommy Donahue, the son of Bulger victim Michael Donahue, says the government still needs to answer for its role in his father's death.
The government needs to be responsible. They need to be accountable for all this crap. We are here because of the United States government. The deceit of the FBI is the reason why we are in this place right now.
So maybe the Bulger saga isn't done just yet.
And U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz is here. Welcome, Carmen Ortiz.
Thank you, Emily. Good to be here.
There's no question in anybody's mind who won and lost this, so we can just settle that right here. We're not debating who won. Clearly the government won. But how do you respond to Hank Brennan and the defense attorneys who say we successfully put the United States government on trial? And even one of the jurors who spoke out last night said they felt that in the jury room.
Well, I think that the reality was that we expected, for example, the finger to be pointed at government misconduct, the corrupt relationship that existed between Bulger and law enforcement officials back then, to be a highlight of the trial. That's been a factor that's been apparent for many, many years, since the evidentiary hearings that were held when Flemmi was apprehended and the case proceeded against him and others, through the cooperation of John Martirano and Kevin Weeks, where we learned many, many years ago about that existent relationship. So to us, this was nothing new. It was something that we acknowledged in our opening statement, that there had been a corrupt relationship, that there were a number of agents that had been involved, and not only on the federal level, but on the state police level, as well as local police officers accepting bribes. And so it was because of this corrupt relationship, which I had indicated before, allowed Bulger to operate that violent organization, as well as allowed him to slip away when honest law enforcement was closing in. And so I think what we have to remember is that it was dishonest, corrupt agents and officers that allowed, unfortunately, in a horrific, dark period of Boston's history, for that to occur. But it was also honest law enforcement and other government officials that made yesterday's result possible. Flemmi's in jail for life, plus 30 years. We hope that Mr. Bulger will be in jail for the rest of his life. And so I think that we've accomplished and addressed a lot of those wrongs.
One of the issues that came up at trial, certainly the scuttlebutt in the media anyway, was whether through Stephen Flemmi's testimony, and I realize he's already cut some deal, would he be able to cut another kind of a deal? He's in a decent facility right now. And I know there's statutes of limitations and all that. Will he be able to get a better deal now,
No.
a reduced sentence?
No, not at all. No.
Nothing. He'll he be in jail for the rest of his life?
No, his testimony throughout the course of this trial and in any other proceedings, I believe, was part of the original cooperation deal. He's not going to get any additional breaks based on his testimony in court. So he's in jail for the rest of his life.
What about what Tommy Donahue says, the son of Michael Donahue? He says the federal government needs to be held accountable. And he's not just talking about getting money, because that's something he hasn't gotten either. But he wants to file some kind of a lawsuit and say the government needs to be accountable. They caused the death of his father by being in cahoots, in a sense, with
You know, I think that the key agent that was involved in significantly in those occurrences by tipping Bulger and Fleming off to potential cooperating witnesses or informants back then, which was the evidence at trial came out regarding Mr. Halloran and how he was targeted, and then unfortunately Mr. Donahue just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it was a horrible, tragic death that occurred. The government has been held accountable. John Connally has been prosecuted, and I think that a lot of the disclosures there, by the time that we learned of some of the instances that the government learned of some of the factors in those cases, the statute of limitations had already run on some of the other corrupt activity. But I can tell you that, you know, if there was any legitimate basis to proceed on in terms of the corrupt actions of any kind of law enforcement officials or other individuals, that we would make that effort. Because I think it's incumbent upon all of us. Not only did they cause these horrific, you know, in some instances led to all this violence and allowed it to exist, but tragically so, they tainted the rest of law enforcement with this corrupt brush. And so now, you know, we said yesterday that this was a horrible situation that occurred. The public's trust in law enforcement has severely been affected, and so we have to do everything that we can to gain that trust again.
Well, I'm sure you saw the juror who spoke out last night said, one of the jurors didn't believe a word that John Martorano said he's got everything to gain. He's already out on jail. He only did 12 years. He murdered 20 people. And he said he's just not credible. And they felt the same way about Stephen Fleming. Was it worth it to make these deals? Could you have gotten these convictions without making deals with John Martorano and Stephen Fleming?
I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, I didn't personally make the deals,
no,
but I don't think so. You have to remember that at the time when John Martorano cooperated, and he was the first one to cooperate, we didn't know what had happened in a number of the murders that had occurred. Didn't even know if murder had occurred. People disappeared. No one knew what had occurred to them. He opened the door to that information. So not only did he give clarity and certainty to what had happened to a number of the victims that were murder victims in some of those charges, but he also revealed the corrupt relationship, started to reveal the corrupt relationship between John Connally and Bulger. And then he also opened the door to other individuals cooperating so that we could learn more and get corroborating evidence, especially through Kevin Weeks, when he led us to the body of 6 victims that we had no idea exactly what had happened to them, where they had been buried, where they were located. And at a minimum, 6 families had more certainty because at least they were able to give decent burials to their family members, to their loved ones. And then you have to remember that proceeding that in terms of the prosecutions, we believe that the testimony was helpful, certainly where we could corroborate it through other witnesses, through independent physical, scientific evidence. And so that's how you put a case together. It's not what you want to do, but what would have been the alternative? Not learn anything? Bulger and Fleming continuing to be free? We didn't have any information regarding those murders.
On appeal, and all these cases, any murder case goes to appeal, but one of the things that Bulger's lawyers will be looking at is the refusal of the judge to hear his claim of immunity. He said, I had immunity to do everything. And so on appeal, they're going to say, why wouldn't you let that in? And why didn't you let it in? It's like, you know, it might not have held up even if he had said, I had immunity. I mean, why not just hear that?
A criminal trial is not a circus. A criminal trial abides by rules, evidentiary rules. The evidence that's submitted to a jury is evidence that's material, that is relevant, that is legal. The judge is basically the referee and makes that determination. There's no such thing as an immunity defense under the circumstances that were described. First of all, there was no evidence that there actually was an agreement. There was nothing in writing. There was no recording. There was really no legitimate evidence that an agreement even existed. But even if there had been, legally, a prosecutor is not authorized to give someone a license to kill the way that Mr. Bulger was suggesting was the case here. I don't even have that power, nor should I. That is completely wrong, against public policy, and it's illegal. It's not like self-defense, which is a legitimate offense.
It's illegal, but the operation back then was illegal, so isn't it possible that it happened? I mean, you look at all the corruption that was going on.
I have not seen any evidence. I've talked to folks who have been involved in the investigation, you know, from 20 to 25 years ago. There's been no substantive, legitimate evidence that a real agreement existed. And I would just suggest that even if one did, that still should not be a defense in this case. It's not like an insanity defense or other legitimate legal defenses. And that's why the judge kept it out. You just can't throw whatever you want in front of a jury and have it be a legitimate basis for consideration. And so I think she made the right decision, obviously.
All right. Carmen Ortiz, pleasure to have you here. I'm sure you're glad this is over.
Thank you. Thank you very much.